Welcome back to the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast. Today we are thinking about wrapping up year 2024. I can hardly believe that we're already winding down. It's getting cold. We're thinking about next year and budgeting and strategic planning, and we got all kinds of stuff going on here. But what's important is that we not get too bound up in what's coming next and always pushing forward, but also taking a minute to reflect on the year and thank everyone that has helped us so far this year. So I have Shelby with me. Welcome, Shelby.
Hi, Katie.
And Shelby is our program director, and you help us with everything programming, but specifically the staff, programming staff, and all of the folks it takes to run programming, volunteers, everybody. How are we thanking everyone this year? So we're going to get into that.
Yeah. So we have our volunteers, we have our donors, we have our other staff members, we have our horses. There's a lot of people that it takes to keep the ship upright. So I think it's really important that we look at all of those groups in depth and determine what is going to make the most impact and be meaningful to those people.
Mm-hmm. So we've been doing this quite a few years, right? Over 35. So how do we keep reinventing the wheel when it comes to thanking people? Because you can't just thank people the same way all the time, because that's boring.
So one of the things that we do every year in summertime at some point, June or July, we do what we call stay interviews with all of our staff. And one of the questions that we ask in those stay interviews is, how do you like to be recognized and how do you like to be thanked? And so it's really important that we take that feedback and create an authentic thank you that means something to that person. So we all have different languages of love, right? And that can be applied to relationships, or it can be applied to the workplace, or whatever that is. And so making sure that we're thanking people in the language that they speak is really important. So if your language is words of affirmation and I give you a gift, that doesn't necessarily mean as much to you.
Mm-hmm.
So really taking that feedback and making sure that we're personalizing that as much as we can. So at Hetra, we have over 200 volunteers that help us every single week. Obviously, it's going to be really, really hard for us to thank each person in a very unique manner. But making sure that, especially for our staff, we're making that feel like they've been heard in the feedback they've given us. And then it's something that is meaningful to them, and it doesn't, we've all gotten that gift that's like, oh, thank you.
This is very generic.
Thank you. And we don't want our staff to feel that way.
Yeah.
So.
And we've talked about the stay interviews before on the show, and we gain a lot of really valuable information from that. But how I like to feel recognized is a part of that. So I will share those stay interview questions again. I've shared them already on Patreon, but I will put a link in the show notes if anybody's interested more in what that stay interview entails. Because it really does tell us a lot about our staff and helps us keep them plugged in and really appreciated and motivated throughout the year.
Yeah.
The one thing we don't obviously do, stay interviews for our volunteers, but we do a volunteer survey.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't that have something on it that has something to do with what do you want more of, or that kind of thing?
Yep. Yeah. So we do. And actually, it is one thing we've talked about with the volunteer team is, do we want to do some stay interviews with volunteers next year? And maybe taking, like, say we randomly select 10 volunteers, pull 10 names out of the hat and try to do a stay interview with them and kind of see if that makes a difference, if we can get a little bit of a poll of our people. But on that volunteer survey that we ask everybody to fill out, one of the questions is, what's something that you would like more of from Hetra, or would feel appreciated to have access to? And the thing that comes back always as number one is education. Our volunteers are so passionate about what we do. They want to know more about it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I will say at Hetra, almost all of our instructors are homegrown and have started with us as volunteers. Same thing with our therapists. And that's because we've been able to provide them the education, and they've kind of worked through the system and gotten to where they are because of that. So obviously with any of the Hetra University stuff, We offer access to that to our volunteers at a discounted or free rate, depending on what it is. They have access to what we call our Advanced Horse Academy.
Mhm.
So we have opportunity for our volunteers to do some more advanced hands-on things. So they might be able to learn how to round pen, or they might be able to learn how to do some more advanced first aid, or um, we've done things like how to work with a pushy horse, how to work with an anxious horse,
Mhm.
and just kind of some more advanced stuff that they maybe wouldn't have the opportunity to learn in a traditional EAS setting.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of us answering the call, sort of, to when our volunteers say, I want more education. We as a staff then come up with, some resources that we can provide. And that doesn't always have to look super expensive. It
Hmm.
doesn't always have to look super time intensive or staff intensive, but just taking, maybe an hour, one night a month or every few months or whatever to offer that opportunity
Hmm.
really does I think make a difference for our volunteers, especially the ones that want that,
Yeah.
right? And that isn't always necessarily like a, hey, thank you for volunteering here. Here's this opportunity, but just providing extra opportunities where they can either, use their hours. We do that at Hetra where we, like you said, it's like 1 hour is $1 basically kind of. And we put a limit on that, right? So we can't,
$100.
yeah, so they can't use like, 500 hours, but they can, use that for things like registering for something like the Advanced Horse Academy or in our merch store.
Hmm.
So they can use that towards any of our t-shirts or sweatshirts or swag or whatever. And I think they really like that too.
Hmm.
And that's also something that we do for our staff.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's not an hour
Right.
trade, but
Yeah, but we do allow our staff. So every year we set a dollar amount that we allow for our staff to basically get free merchandise. So whether that be $50 or whatever, and say then they get a code for the store and get whatever they want to out of the store for free at any point during the year. So we
Mhm,
usually do 3 or 4 merchandise stores, and they can use that in January. They can use it in December. It doesn't
mhm,
really make any difference. And then we also do like things like embroidery or things like that, because
yeah.
our people are really proud of working here, and they really like to wear their stuff when they go to conferences or into the
Mhm,
arena or whatever it is. So um, a lot of times we'll get like jackets and offer the embroidery for people on those.
mhm.
And our staff seems to really like that too.
Yeah. And that's something that isn't super expensive, a super expensive thing to do, especially if you do embroidery, because like I think everybody has their certain things they like, right? So I like this kind of coat and Shelby likes that kind of coat and
Mhm.
whatever. So you don't have to pay for the upfront like apparel part of it, and then you just pay for them to have the logo embroidered or their name
Yeah.
or instructor or whatever on there, and that can mean a lot to them, so they can show their pride.
Yeah.
So there's other things that, or other people rather, that we think about when we think about thanking people at the end of the year, and those are donors and sponsors.
Yeah.
Petra puts a lot of thought into this as well. And do we do any kind of formal, like, we don't really obviously do a survey or anything with our donors, but how do we find out how our donors want to be thanked?
Really so our development team does a really nice job of developing that relationship with our donors and kind of determining what they're looking for in institutions that they're giving their money to. And
Mhm.
that's kind of it's a pretty standard conversation to have with
Mhm.
donors, is how do you want to be recognized,
Yeah.
is very standard. And some of them say, I want to be anonymous, I don't want to
Right.
have my name on anything. And some people say, I want my name and lights on the front of the building,
Yeah.
so really kind of taking that information and getting it, and then kind of catering to that. But a lot of times our donors are really looking for just a personal touch, right? Like a personal thank you, like stopping in and
Mhm.
saying thank you so much. And a lot of times they want to know what kind of difference they've made. So
Mm.
what did their money do? How many lives did their money impact this year? Things like that really goes a long way. And then things like just stopping in, dropping off a cookie tray and
Yeah.
saying, hey guys, thanks so much for supporting Hetra this year. We really appreciate it. We hope to continue the relationship next year.
And I think a big part of that is just cultivating that relationship where you're, even if you do drop off a goodie bag or a whatever, take the time to stop and really say, hey, what's going on around here? How is everybody? And making that touch a little bit more personal, because I think businesses get a lot of, like Pepperidge Farm trays and,
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like that from people that thank them. But it's that, like you said, the story and the personal part of it that makes the biggest difference.
Well, and the sales piece of it too, like remembering what their kids' names are, and
Yeah.
how did Sally do in soccer this fall, and
Mhm.
things like that goes a long way, and just treating them like a person and not a dollar
Yeah, for
is a
sure.
huge thing, especially for your larger donors, because they have hundreds, I promise you, hundreds of people knocking at their door, probably more than that, depending on what size of donor they are, asking for their money. So letting them know that we don't view them as just money. We view them as partners in what we do, and we genuinely and authentically care about who they are and want to continue the relationship is a big piece for them.
Yeah. And I think the way you choose to do that could be a variety of things.
Mhm.
Like we do send emails, um, which work, and some people really like emails. We do send handwritten
Mhm.
notes. Handwritten's best, folks. I know
It
it takes
is.
a little time and a little thought, but people really love handwritten notes. Research shows that over and over. So some kind of personalized note. I know we do or like end of year holiday
We
type
do usually
notes.
we do it around Thanksgiving, so ours just went out. And we do it for all of our donors, and then we
Yeah.
do it for lapsed donors too, and just say, we hope you're doing well. Hope your holiday season is
Yeah.
great, whatever. But yeah, they're all handwritten. And then a lot of times for people that we personally know. So like I did a lot of them this year. I don't personally know every single one that I wrote, but I try to put some sort of a personal touch in it. And then we'll write on the outside of the envelope, because a lot of times those envelopes are stickers or they're printed,
Yeah.
and that makes it feel a little bit less.
More corporate
Yeah,
kind of,
and so
yeah.
a lot of times they'll write on the outside of the envelope, like, "Hey, Sam, please open me, Shelby,"
Yeah.
and write something on the outside so that they know that it's not just another.
I like
And,
that.
and those are never, never, never asks. There's
Mhm.
never a dollar ask in those. It's strictly thank you.
Yeah,
Just thank you for your support.
I love that. We also do phone calls. So depending on the level of donor or what's going on, like is it Giving Tuesday? No, Annual Fund.
Annual fund. So we do phone calls for all of our annual fund donors.
Yeah.
Get phone calls. So at the end of the year, anybody that donates to the annual fund gets a phone call and just says thank you. And honestly, most of the time, your people aren't going to answer the phone because
You
they
get a
don't know who
voicemail.
it is,
Yeah.
So you leave a voicemail, but that's a nice voicemail to get. Like, hey,
Yeah.
this is Shelby with Hetra. I'm just calling to say thanks so much for your donation of $20. We
Mhm.
really appreciate it. Helped us buy a bag of grain. Hope your New Year's great.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
I remember doing them a few years, or it was last year or 2 years ago, and the amount of people that like just wanted to like, they were just so happy you
Uh-huh.
called and they just wanted to chit chat, and they're like, "Oh, just baking cookies," and
Yeah.
and then you're all of a sudden you're talking about recipes or whatever. But um, people just, I think, were really
Yeah.
surprised that we called and just wanted to say thank you, and it wasn't an ask.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was just a truly like, hope you're doing well and thank you.
Yeah.
People really liked that.
Come join us in Gretna, Nebraska for a hands-on EAS workshop March 13th through the 15th in 2025. As the EAS industry continues to expand and diversify, it is of utmost importance to keep the needs of our equine partners a priority. At our workshop, get a comprehensive look at all the aspects of successful equine welfare, including appropriate equine selection, proper training, conditioning, and integration into programming, learn how to do practical saddle fit for EAS, set weight limits for your horses, and so much more. Equine welfare strategies are hard to learn while sitting in a desk at a regular conference. We believe in the power of hands-on practice with equine skills in a collaborative environment where we can learn from each other. Attendees should expect a combination of valuable hands-on experience with our horses, classroom-based education, and individualized coaching to help solidify the workshop content. Get the entire 2.5 days of content for just $125 with our early bird registration discount available till January 1st. Discounts are available for audit-only positions as well as scholarship opportunities. If you're a member of our exclusive club at Patreon, make sure to use your additional $25 discount code. To register and get all the details, head over to hetrauniversity.org or click the link in the show notes below. We hope to see you in Gretna this March.
Okay, so we talked about staff, volunteers, donors. What about the even more behind the scenes folks, board members?
Yeah. So
How are we thanking our board members?
I think board members are people who we want to be really intentional in our asks and our thank yous for. So I do think really getting to know your board and asking them what is meaningful to them goes a long way, just like it does with everybody. But most of our boards are not very big. They might be a handful to 15 people. And so I think really going above and beyond to try to thank them, because our board's not getting paid. And I can tell you our board has a very, very, very tough job. They are responsible for a lot of things. So I think asking them, what means something to them? Does it mean something to bring in pizza when we have a board meeting? Does it mean a handwritten thank you? Does it mean, what exactly is that's meaningful to them?
Do we do some kind of like interview or year-end review or something with them to help us get to know them a little bit better and what their preferences are?
So what Hetra does with our board is that's more done at the beginning.
Okay.
So like we kind of do, like if we have a new board member, that's part of the process of
Like a
bringing
meet
a
and greet
bringing a
situation?
new board member on is getting to know some of those things. And then just like we would do with donors, a lot of that's just cultivation and relationship building throughout. But we don't necessarily do something at the end of every year, but it's more like as we bring a new board member on and making sure we know those things at the start.
That makes sense. And because that's the way it should be, we should be developing personal relationships with our board members so that number one, we can figure out how they can help us,
Yeah.
right? I mean, what's their niche, what's their area of expertise?
Look at this. We've got the perfect lady to join our podcast.
Oh, I'm coming to join a podcast.
We're talking about how do we thank our board.
Oh.
Oh, she says it is a good one. What do you have to add about thanking our board? We just talked about how we try to get to know them on a personal level to figure out what they appreciate.
Yeah. So we oftentimes do a handwritten thank you. I do at the end of the year, beginning of the next year, thanking them for their service. That I feel like is really important because that's a personal note to them from me. And it's handwritten, which I think means a lot to people because it means I took the time to sit down and thank them for what they do. Of course, we do swag and that kind of stuff as well. I try to make sure that I'm thanking them throughout the year. With our board, we can have tough conversations with our board, and especially when it comes to budgeting and financing and those types of things. And their job is to make sure that we're financially sound. And so making sure that even through those tough conversations, we're thanking them and we're grateful to them for, being able to do that, because we don't want just a yes board that will get us into trouble really quick. So it's really nice to have that.
And I think just all year long in every interaction being respectful of our board and not, so we might have a hard conversation about the budget, but not leaving that and saying, oh my gosh, Jim just told us that, blah, 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 whatever. But understanding like he's just doing his job. That's why we asked him to be here.
Yeah.
And he's providing us his expertise and his knowledge, and he's sharing that with us and reminding ourselves and just telling them we are grateful for that.
And I think the other thing that goes to thanking the board throughout the year is being respectful of their time. So when we come to a board meeting, we have an agenda. Our board meetings typically are an hour long. We try to be very respectful that we get through that agenda in an hour so that we're respectful of their time because they have a lot going on and they're donating their time to us. And we want to make sure we're very respectful of that.
For sure. Lots of ways to do that. Well, thanks for popping in, Edie.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Didn't know.
So there's lots of different ways to say thank you and show appreciation for the year. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be a huge production or take a ton of time. But doing it is the part that matters.
Yeah. And going back to the staff piece of things, Katie, I think a lot of times in organizations like ours, so at Hetra specifically, we have a lot of staff, but I feel like in EAS centers as a whole, we have staff that are not always here at the same time. So we have a lot of people that work with us, but they might not know each other, and allowing opportunity for those people to be able to interact with each other and get to know each other outside of a work environment, I think goes a long way too. So we always do an end of the year party. And then we have everybody come, they're invited, welcome to bring their spouses, whoever they'd like to bring. And it's just time for people to get together and talk to each other and be outside of work and just kind of have that, human interaction. I think it all comes down to human interaction, right? Like people just want to know that other people care about them and that they're valued.
Yeah, the connection part. And we try to do even things throughout the year where our volunteers and staff are intermingled because it's like I don't work on Thursday nights, so I don't know the Thursday night, volunteers or the Thursday night instructors as well as I do the rest of them, so it's like giving, like you said, the opportunity for everyone to get to know each other, I think is really cool. And that can look like, it might look like a potluck. It might look like, you go to a, rent a party room or something and everyone pays for their own food, but at least you're able to get together or, whatever. It doesn't have to be a huge, 4-course catered meal. It's just providing that opportunity for appreciation and community, I think is cool.
Goes a long way.
Yeah. So as part of our mission to help thank everybody, we at Hetra have put together some thank you gifts that we think would be great to give instructors, volunteers, donors. It really could be anybody. And part of those bundles is continuing education. So you want to talk a little bit about what we do for education for our staff or why that part is so important to us?
Yeah, we offer, obviously, anything that is on Hetra University is free to access for all of our staff and highly encouraged for them to access and listen to that stuff. But then other things we do is we do a quarterly education of some sort. So in course would have been Q3 of this year, we did something on emergency dismounts, emergency procedures, what to do in an emergency kind of thing. And really just that's something all of our people are trained on. But we kind of just did more. We
Take a
just
deeper
did,
dive.
did do another deeper dive. We do kind of a refresher on things and looked at as a group, like here's things that could happen. What would we do in that situation? What's the right thing to do? And kind of talked about that. And I think people took a lot away from that. We got really creative and put our EQ up on a little pedestal and practiced live pulling somebody down. Obviously, when you do an emergency dismount, you want to be careful of your horses. So we did that with our EQ, and that went really well. And I think people really liked the ability to get hands on and do some of that stuff. And then actually this week we are doing a goal setting and documentation continuing ed. So we're going to talk through, and again, those are things that people get trained on when they first come in and start their process with us, but we can always learn more, right? So we're changing the way that we write our goals and our documentation going into 2025. And so we're going to do a little bit of education on how that new system is going to work, but then also on what makes good goals and how do we set good goals. And we have a goal bank that we've developed over the last couple of years. So kind of going through that and just going to provide some of that education, and our people seem to really like those things.
Yeah. And we offer those as paid opportunities. So people want to come, they do get paid for that hour or whatever it is. So that's a nice part too. And I think that continuing education is something that is important to offer because it's not always something you want to spend your own money on.
Or that people can spend their own money on, right?
Absolutely.
Like a lot of us, if this is our only job, we're working in a nonprofit, we may not have disposable income to spend on some of those things, but it's really important.
Yeah. And I think things like going to, whoever your certifying body is, if they have a conference, every year or something like that, being able to pay for your staff to go for that, even a partial scholarship to go to a conference, continuing education online. Obviously, there's lots of on-demand and webinar and kind of online course type things that you can do. And education is it's the gift that keeps giving, right? And it's not that we want our staff to think like, I'm thanking you with continuing education because I want you to be better. You need to be better. That's not the point. And I don't want people to think that that's the lens, I guess, for it, but that it's, again, like you said, something that we may not be able to or don't necessarily want to spend a ton of money on, but that's going to benefit them long term, make their jobs easier, more enjoyable. And
I think I think we've seen time and time again, like I said, with our volunteer surveys, and same thing with our staff, and maybe that's the culture at Hetra. But I think it's more of just human beings. Everybody wants to know more,
be
right?
better, yeah.
And so I think allowing those opportunities is just really important. And I think in this industry, especially, it's not always easy to find something that's applicable to what you
Oh,
do,
talk
right?
about that.
So I think if we can do a little bit of the footwork for them and find something that is applicable to what they are doing, I think that goes a long way, both for our volunteers and for our staff, because there's a lot of education out there on horses and there's a lot of education out there on disabilities, but there's not always a lot of education that's accessible for this industry in specific. And so I think doing a little bit of that footwork for them is a gift in itself.
Yeah, for sure. And you're absolutely right. And so that's kind of what we strive to do at Hetra University is bring back, whether it's disability education or it's horses or whatever it is, administration, whatever it is, how does that impact me in the arena? And so part of our gifts is that we're doing free webinars. So every, mug, t-shirt, tumbler, sticker, whatever you would like to get comes with a free webinar.
Mm-hmm.
So it does have a coupon in there for you to gift your staff. And you can even go out there and just buy the webinar if you want to buy a $10 webinar, and we can send you the digital download to the coupon if you want to gift that however you would like to. Otherwise, we're doing gift wrapping and we're sending it to you for free. So we're making your job really easy this year to thank everybody on your team. And of course, it has the Not Just a Pony Ride message because that applies to everyone.
And I think a lot of times our board members aren't in the arena or aren't as active in our day-to-day programming as our instructors or volunteers. And so they are passionate about our mission, but they maybe aren't as connected to it. So I think really helping to drive home to them, like, this is what we do. And it's not just a pony ride, and keep driving that mission is important for them and something that I think is unique and they seem to like.
Yeah, for sure. It applies to, and that's why I say like volunteers or staff or board or donors. I mean, really anybody. Like it's not just a pony ride message is pretty profound. And I think that everyone has their own way of explaining that and their own way of how it connects for them. And so being able to gift that message, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, if you're interested in any of those gift options for the folks in your village, in your own centers, I'm going to link that in the show notes below. Again, we're going to gift wrap everything and that shipping is free. So head over there and check it out. We've got options that are super affordable. They start at $10 all the way up to $50. So pick something that's right for you. And I hope that everyone has an awesome wrap up to their 2024. And as a lasting kind of parting gift, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the podcast. Share it with a friend. And I hope you continue to enjoy these episodes as we wrap up the year and new and exciting stuff for 2025. Thanks for stopping by, Shelb.
Yep.
That's all for today. But until the next episode launches, scroll down to the show notes and click on the link to get plugged in with us on Facebook, Instagram, or our exclusive educational club at Patreon. This podcast is presented by Hetra University, the educational arm of Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy in Gretna, Nebraska.